Welcome to Nerd Alert. Today we have a very special guest. He's my friend and he's also well known as the builder of robots and worlds and dreams. You know him from Mythbusters. It's Grant Imahara.
Hi, Kim Horcher.
Hi, Grant. We're so glad to have you here today. Let's talk a little bit about you. Let's get to know Grant.
About me. Okay, well, I've been on a show on Discovery Channel called Mythbusters for about 9 years now, where we crash cars, blow things up, shoot guns, all in the name of science.
Yes.
Proving or disproving urban legends. And on the side, I do act in web series as Sulu in Star Trek Continues.
Yes, I wanted to talk about that actually.
Yeah.
I actually met Vic Mignogna a long time ago before this, and he was like, oh, I'm working on this new top secret series. And it turned out he was going to be Kirk in Star Trek Continues, and you're Sulu. Is this one of your first major acting roles?
Yeah, I did a guest spot on Eureka, but this is the first sort of featured role that I have. And I remember Vic and I were at a mutual friend's party, and he was saying, you know, I've got this really cool project. We're making all these sets from the original Star Trek series.
The sets look good.
And he's shown them to me, and I think he could sense that I was salivating on his phone, because I was like, ooh, gosh. And he's like, yeah, and you know, I haven't cast a Sulu yet. So and I was like, please call me. And so a couple days later, he called and said, Grant, would you be my Sulu? And I said, oh my.
Have you met George Takei?
Only through Twitter.
Yeah?
And what I did, you know, when the first day of filming, I said, you know what? George Takei's always been a hero of mine. He's inspired me. I'm now reprising his role. I'm going to tweet him and say, hey, George, thanks for, you know, everything that you've done and being inspiring. And like 5 minutes later, literally 5 minutes later, he tweets me back and says, well, Grant, you know, and I'm reading it, of course, in his voice, in my mind. It's like, you know, thank you for all you're doing for future generations. And I'm like, oh! I took a screenshot of it, I retweeted it. It was awesome.
That's so cute.
I know.
It's fun that you're like a geek too, and you're doing all this cool stuff on Mythbusters and in Star Trek. What was your biggest like geek out moment?
The George Takei one was one of them. And certainly on Star Trek Continues, the first time that I sat at Sulu Station, at the helm, on a bridge set which looks exactly like it's the world's most accurate reproduction of that Enterprise bridge. It was like being a kid on Christmas and opening every present all at once and playing with them all day long. That's how awesome that was.
It's cool.
So yeah.
It's like a dream. But you're also involved you were involved a little bit in the Star Wars world. You worked for ILM.
Yes.
And you were one of the few people to ever control R2-D2, I've heard.
Yes. One of 3 official operators at the time. As it turns out, a friend of mine was the archivist. And so it was his job to maintain all of the droids, and if there was a special appearance where they needed to show up, he would send them out. During the release of the special edition, they needed droids, like they were like, oh God, we want New York and DC and Florida and LA all at once. And so there were enough droids because you always have a backup when you're on set. In fact, several backups. At one point there were 13 various droids. Some were stunt droids. But anyway, you have many droids available, but there was at the time only one operator. So he said, hey, Grant, do you want to learn how to drive R2-D2? This is my friend Don Bees, the archivist. And I'm like, yes, I would love to learn how to drive R2-D2. So he trained me and Nelson Hall, and the 3 of us split up all the events all around the country, and that's how I became an official driver.
Are there intricacies to controlling him?
Actually, driving R2 is fairly simple. There's one joystick. The right thumb controls the body moving around. The left thumb controls the little hollow eye, So you don't have to do that very often.
Can you do it with a PlayStation controller? It sounds like it lends itself right to that.
You could. You could if you could hook that into the radio control system. You absolutely could. But see, the thing that's missing is the index finger, which is a slider, and that turns the head. So, and as Artoo operators, we had to be trained to drive with the controller behind our backs.
What?
Because often,
And blindfolded?
Well, that's optional. But,
Takes away from the magic if you see a guy there with a big controller.
exactly. You'll often be in the middle of civilians, many kids, and of course many adults too, who want to be enthralled in this magic. And, if you're there, it dispels the magic for them. So you wear a jacket, and you actually hang out there and just, kind of casually operate R2 and kind of watch along, and people, several times it's like I'll be standing next to someone talking to them, and they're like, yeah, there's a guy, there's a, not a guy inside, but there's like a camera in there and he can see us. I'm like, oh,
It's just
really?
like, yeah.
That's cool.
Weird.
Yeah.
Now, at the time of your piloting R2-D2, did you have that Mythbusters notoriety? Like, were people coming up to you? And
no.
Okay,
This
was before
was
that.
way before. So before Mythbusters, it was 9 years I worked at ILM, and then 3 years at Lucasfilm before that at THX. And so that's when I was working at THX, even before ILM, is when the R2 thing happened. So it was almost 10 years that I was driving. Not, all the time, but
It's on your resume.
it's on my resume. It's a good one.
I would put it there if I were you. But you've not only controlled some really effing awesome robots, but you've built some too. So we have Geoff Peterson from the Craig Ferguson show.
That's right.
I've heard of a little creature called Heisenberg.
Heisenberg, yes, he was a steampunk robot for a friend's wedding, and he was the ring bearer. So he had a big, kind of copper bubble head and a monocle and a top hat and tails, and he distributed the rings to the bride and groom
That's so cool.
in test tubes.
Naturally.
Yeah,
That is so cool.
yeah,
And you've also did the Energizer Bunny work on that.
that's right. The current generation of Energizer Bunnies. That was one of the first things I did at ILM. I'd been there for probably about 8 months, and the job came in that they needed a whole new fleet of Energizer Bunnies. The original fleet, due to some
Batteries ran out.
no, yeah,
I'm just saying.
I know. That's the number one. It's like, what happens if you put the batteries in backwards? And that's the number one. I won't tell you what happened. Yeah. But the person who built the original series, through some contract technicality, owned those puppets. And so when they had a contract dispute, he went away and he said, fine, I'll just take my bunnies and hit the road. And then the Eveready Battery Company, as they were called in those days, no longer had their mascot. So they came to us at ILM and said, look, you're world experts in animatronics. We need another 3 Energizer Bunnies, and we need them in 3 months. And, I can't really tell you how much they cost, but Ferrari,
What?
Okay.
Testarossa,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah. But, it's like it's a really complex mechanism to fit into a smallish space. I mean, the bunny himself, the body's about this tall, the drum is about this big, so he's larger than most people think.
Is it a real drum?
No, but that's where all the electronics are stored, because you can pop the cover off, put batteries in, which, by the way, the Energizer Bunny does in fact run on Energizer batteries.
I think it would pretty much have to.
It
It would be a coup otherwise.
It didn't. Well, the first generation didn't.
Didn't?
And it was a contractual requirement that he run on Energizer batteries and only Energizer batteries.
Is it
So if
double
you
A's or is it some super...
It is, they are in fact off the shelf AA batteries.
That's hysterical.
44 of them.
What? No.
Yeah, well, it's like they've got motors and, there's more than a dozen servos.
And that's 3 less than a Sega Game Gear, so...
Oh. What is this like? Like just being able to, it seems like you're able to just create these wonderful things.
Yes.
How did you get started into that?
I always had, from being young, I started out playing with Lego. And so the idea of building things was ingrained. It was something that I'd love to do, and working within a system and putting the blocks together. And finally, when I got to ILM, the kindly machinists, many of whom dated back to, some back to Empire, some back to Howard the Duck, but they taught me how to machine things on the fly. And from there, I could not be stopped.
Clearly.
Give your kids Legos.
Yeah.
That's right,
that
and
easy.
so that's what happened.
So really the beginning of all this is Lego, or
Yes.
being allowed to create and learn on your own.
Yes, it gives you a framework to put your ideas into action. You think something, you put the little plastic blocks together, and there it is.
It's a thing. So recently you were kind of in the news at LAX when the terminals got shut down. And you were on the way to Punkin' Chunkin',
Yes.
which thankfully he made, and
Yeah.
pumpkins were chunked in.
That's right.
Tell me about that a little bit.
So we were, Tori, one of my co-hosts on Mythbusters, and I were on our way to Punkin' Chunkin' in Delaware, which is an annual event where they spend, some of them, hundreds of thousands of dollars on these machines, and 6 different types of machine, with the sole purpose of firing a pumpkin across a field further than anybody else. And so we were at LAX, at the Virgin Terminal on the morning, and our flight was supposed to leave like 9 a.m. It got delayed because of weather in Delaware, and it got delayed again and again. And so I was just sitting in the Virgin Lounge, kind of listening to music and, playing Magic the Gathering on my iPad. And so suddenly I see people gathered up against the window, and the Virgin Lounge is on the 2nd floor. They're all pressed up against the window and looking really agitated, and like people are like, "Come check this out," and so I'm like, "What is happening?" And so that's when I tweeted, "Weird, something's happening here at LAX." So I get up, I look at the window, and I see people like looking down, streaming out of the terminal. And there's a jet bridge, and there's a plane kind of at the same level as us and off to the side. And I see people streaming off of the jet bridge, like as if they're exiting the plane. I'm like, "Oh, that's weird. Maybe that's not right." People running on the tarmac, that's wrong. And then police cars pull up, and then I'm like, this is really wrong. So I'm kind of started to live tweet what's happening. And then I heard shots, like 3 shots. I was like, I'm pretty sure that's a gun. And that's when everybody in the lounge kind of got away from the door and huddled in a corner. And it was like super tense. I'm like, there's shots fired. I don't know what's going on. And then the Virgin people put us in lockdown. They locked all the doors, and we were like sort of tensely waiting. And so we were watching CNN, actually, and that's when it started to come through. The news was filtering through. But this is the actual terminal, Terminal 3, where we were, right outside where all was happening. Now, I was upstairs. Tori was downstairs, where the shooter was. And I didn't know where he was. He didn't know where I was. And I was just... It was a very tense situation. After about half hour, they came, and people with automatic weapons came to the lounge to check on us, and they're like, "Okay, everybody stay here." It was a long, long day.
It sounds terrifying.
It was terrifying. And then after we were sort of moved out, and we were moved out in a long group, and then moved to another area and staged there with police like every 10 feet walking along with us. And it was crazy. It was crazy.
And eventually the Discovery jet came and picked
So,
you up.
right. So the whole point, the whole reason why we were there in the first place was to get to Punkin' Chunkin'. And Tori and I and Carrie were hosting the event for Science Channel. And so 2/3 of their hosts are stuck at LAX. And like, oh yeah, no, we got you on a United flight at 2 o'clock. And I'm looking around, and the terminal is deserted. It's in chaos. And I'm like, this is not happening. And so I'm talking to them. And then also, my phone starts blowing up. I'm like, oh my God.
We were worried about you, Grant.
I know, but thank you, Kim, by the way. But it's like our publicist from Discovery, she's like, oh my God, where are you? I'm like, I'm inside the terminal. She's, we need to, you need to talk.
Scenario?
Yeah, well, yeah, because it's a small lounge and there's people.
Oh,
I'm like, I'm inside the terminal. And she's like, yeah, no, they're gonna find me. No, but she's like, where are you? Because everybody and their uncle wants to talk to you guys. And so we ended up talking to half a dozen news outlets, including Anderson Cooper, which was really cool.
Cool.
But anyway, so Discovery's like, Debbie Myers, the head of Science Channel, was like, if I don't get these guys out of here and to Delaware, because this is an event with people showing up. We just show up to the event to film it, and then we broadcast it later. These people are going to show up whether or not Tori and I are there. So they're like, she's like, I need to get the guys out of there and to the event in order to save the show. So
Chunkin waits for no man.
No, Chunkin does not wait for anyone. And so she made a call, and then they're like, you guys be cool. Chill out. I'm sending the wolf. And so Discovery sent the corporate jet, which was amazing. And so that's the only way we would have made it out of there in time. And the jet flew us overnight, and it had a sofa. It was nice.
And all it took was all that for you to get to be on the jet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a nice perk. That was a nice end to a very tense day.
Well, I think we were all pretty tense and scared about it too once we heard Grant was in there. But we're glad you made it out, and we're glad you're here today, and we're going to talk about robots and shit. So stick around for Grant.